The standard process that a CPU performs when processing data is the fetch, decode, execute cycle. Sometimes this is referred to as the fetch-execute cycle for short. When a program runs on a computer, the data it is using and the program itself are loaded into the RAM, or the main memory, by the operating system. For example, when typing a number, both the data the program is using, in this case the number, and the program itself, such as Excel, are loaded into the RAM. Once this is done, the CPU can then begin the fetch, decode, execute cycle.
The fetch step involves retrieving an instruction from a memory address in the RAM. The CPU sends the address of the instruction it wants to the RAM via a hardware path connecting the two. This path is called the address bus. The RAM finds the instruction stored at that address, fetches it, and passes back to the CPU via another hardware path called the data bus. The instruction is stored in one of the CPU's own memory areas, called a register.
Next is the decode step, which involves the CPU breaking down the instructions into something it can understand, in the same way that a translator might change something from French to English to help you understand it. The CPU identifies the operation code, opcode, part of the instruction that it has stored in the program counter. This tells it what operation it needs to perform. If the opcode requires the CPU to act on some data, such as adding some numbers, then the second part of the instruction will either contain this data or it will contain the memory address of where the data is stored.
Finally, the execute step is where the data is processed. The instruction defined in the opcode, such as add these numbers, is carried out using the data that has been fetched, and the result is stored in another register. This data can then be used by subsequent instructions, or be passed back to the main memory. Once this cycle has finished, the CPU then gets ready to begin another cycle. This cycle can be carried out several thousand million times a second, depending on the CPU.